F1 in 2026 is going to be a bit of a wild card. With new engine manufacturers, teams, and regulations, there's so much changing. Teams like Red Bull, who were winning races a couple of months ago, could now somehow wind up in the midfield because of Ford. Or a team like Aston Martin could become a top team with their new Honda deal. Or even Alpine could go from backmarkers to high in the standings with their new Mercedes engine deal. The truth is, so much can change this year alone, so I thought I'd do a roundup on what to expect from each team this year. I'm going to mention 3 things for each team: their floor, their ceiling, and my personal expectations. The floor is how low they will place under the worst case scenario, and the ceiling is the opposite of how well they can do under the best conditions, and my personal expectation is a bit self-explanatory, where I think they will end up. Pay more attention to the floor and the ceiling, as that's actually based on information, while my prediction is just my opinion. Now, I could just say the floor for every team is last and the ceiling is first if I wanted to be 100% correct, but that's boring, and even if I do get some wrong, that's fine. Think of it like a bell curve, where I'm trying to place the high and low end in areas to maximize probability, but there still is a chance to place outside the range. Also, make sure to leave comments on any parts you think I personally got wrong, or any teams you think can cause really big surprises. Anyways, first is McLaren, and they're set up in a really good spot. They've just come off the back of 2 Constructors' Championships, have 2 of the best drivers in the sport with now champion Lando Norris, and Oscar Piastri, who is also coming off his best season, and they possess that Mercedes power unit that everyone seems to be frothing at the mouth for. Realistically, even if all things fall down, there's no way this team isn't at least in the discussion for the championship lead again. They have so far revealed that they won't be bringing upgrades early in the year and are focused fully on getting a good car right out the gate, and if that is the case, they can't really go low. For the floor, I'm going to say the lowest they can possibly place as a team is P3. I only see one other team contesting them for the top spot, which I'll get into later, and worst case scenario, P3 comes from a late season charge from another team or some unforeseen problems that might happen. The ceiling is going to be as high as it can get, being P1, as they won it in the past 2 years, so it would kind of be dumb to not put them in the conversation again. As for my personal prediction, I'm going to say a P2 finish. Like I said earlier, I see one team contesting them, and I think they'll get the better of them, but I'll get into that in a second. Next is Mercedes, and spoiler, they are the team I see contesting McLaren. They too have 2 top-tier drivers, with George Russell arguably being the best driver last season, and Kimi Antonelli now having a season of experience under his belt. The team as a whole is ready to make a jump to the next level. We saw in 2014 how Mercedes was able to nail the regulation changes and dominate, and yes, they missed the mark a bit in the shift in 2022, but I think it's back to old ways for 2026. Obviously, being Mercedes, they too have that Mercedes power unit, and the team was able to beat both Ferrari and Red Bull last year despite having a young driver on their team, and in my mind, it can only trend upwards this year. When you separate the grid into its different battles, I'm assuming Mercedes will be in that top bracket bringing the fight to McLaren, and therefore their floor and ceiling are similar. They too have the ceiling of first, as going into this year, they are the favorites in a lot of people's mind to bring the best car, and the floor is also the same with third, being the worst case scenario, as I really don't see other teams being able to contest with the same consistency that Mercedes and McLaren can bring to the table. My personal expectation is that they will finish first and bring the Constructors' Championship back to Brackley for the first time since 2021. Next up is Red Bull, and they are a bit more of a wild card. With the new deal with Ford and Isaac Hadjar stepping up into the second seat, there are a lot more moving pieces coming into 2026. No one truly knows what to expect out of this Ford engine, but what I will say is I don't think it'll be on the same level as the 2 Mercedes cars I just mentioned. Also, Red Bull's Constructors' Championship seems to be a lot more variable to change as they sacrifice Constructors' results in favor of Max Verstappen's driver standing results, so the range is a lot larger between the floor and ceiling. They were winning races last year, but with all the changes, that might not be the case again. If they become a podium team, having one driver score all your points could be a lot more detrimental to the final standings and result in an upper midfield finishing position, meaning the floor for this team is 6th place. Now, that is the worst case scenario, but there still is a chance that Red Bull does have winning potential, and that Isaac Hadjar also does perform, meaning they would be near the top. They still aren't on that Mercedes and McLaren level if that is the case, so I'll put their ceiling at third. My personal prediction is fourth, as I think they'll fall somewhere in between. Alright, next is Ferrari, and they too are a bit more of an unknown going into 2026. I think it's fair to say 2025 wasn't the best year for Ferrari, and it was one that they were expecting a lot for after bringing in Lewis Hamilton, but it didn't exactly live up to that. They did have some highs like the sprint win in China, but I think the weekend as a whole characterized their season with getting disqualified from the feature race the next day. Issues might solve themselves with Lewis Hamilton now having a new race engineer, but we can't guarantee that. But at the end of the day, it is still Ferrari, and we can expect them to compete in the upper division of F1 regardless, just maybe not at the very top. I have them in a similar category to Red Bull, that worst comes to worst, they end up at the very top of the midfield in 6th, and the best case, they wind up in 3rd behind McLaren and Mercedes. They have a high ceiling with 2 world-class drivers, but the team itself is the limiting factor, as we know Ferrari loves the art of self-sabotage. Personally, I think they'll end up 5th, right behind Red Bull, but I expect it to be a tight battle between the two. Now for the final team in this upper division of F1, and I see that being Williams. Williams is a lot bigger of a powerhouse coming into 2026 than a lot of people realize, and I truly think they're going to shock the F1 world. I know I've said it a lot, but they too have one of the strongest driver duos on the grid, and we're finally going to get to see Alex Albon in a top tier car again. They too have that infamous Mercedes power unit, and they started development on the 2026 car extremely early compared to the other teams. So much so that they kind of wrote off 2025 and said it would be a rough year, and still finished 5th and had multiple podiums. That in its own right is pretty incredible, and it sets high expectations going forward for the team. Now, I promise this is the last team on the list where I'm going to have the same stuff as prior teams, but Williams is following the suit of Red Bull and Ferrari in having a high ceiling of 3rd and a floor of 6th. With the hype they have compounded into this year, call me crazy, but I see them being regulars on the podium, and maybe even snagging a race win. My personal prediction for them is 3rd, which is definitely higher than most people would put them, and I likely will be wrong. But at least I'm establishing it here. I'm on the Williams hype train before the season starts, so if they do perform, I called it. Now, Cadillac is a bit of a different story from the rest. They're completely new and are running Ferrari power units for the time being, in preparation for their own GM motors in the future. Both Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez are drivers that I'm confident can take this team to a decent level regardless of car performance, and score points, but in reality, it's hard not to place this team low, as they really have nothing to go off of. Compared to a team like Audi, Cadillac had much less preparation time, and the first couple of years with the team is going to be a bit tough to get acclimated, as they basically are just preparing for what they can in the first couple of years before they can become a works team. The expectation is that Cadillac will be fighting for occasional points where they can, and in reality, they don't really have a shot placing anywhere above 9th. The floor of this team is last and 11th, but like I said, it's not necessarily a disappointment to be in last, as they're just starting completely from scratch. My personal prediction for this team will be a P11 finish, as unfortunately, I do have to pick a team to fill that last spot. Racing Bulls is the only team on the grid with a rookie in the form of Arvid Lindblad, and pairing him with Liam Lawson is going to be a good watch this year. Just like the Red Bull senior team, they're making the switch to those Ford engines, and the big thing with Racing Bulls is that if those Ford engines aren't good, they're going to suffer a lot more than Red Bull. Red Bull has Max Verstappen, Racing Bulls doesn't, so a lot will truly lie in the machinery. Racing Bulls capped off last year pretty solidly with a 6th in the Constructors, but they also don't have Isaac Hadjar this time around. To be honest, the range of what they're going to be able to achieve this year is huge. I could see him placing as high as 6th if all things go right, and they would be right behind the Big 5 that I talked about earlier. But at the same time, they could go as far down as 10th. Cadillac holds that 11th spot to me, so I don't see RB being dead last and in competition with them, but the new Ford deal is just such a big question going into this year that my guess is a P9 finish. But RB is one of 2 teams that just holds so much uncertainty. Aston Martin is another team that a lot of people have placed very high. They're the only team with Honda this year, and a lot of staff additions, including Adrian Newey taking up the team principal role, means extremely high expectations going forward. Contrary to Ford, Honda's been in the sport for a bit now, so even though the deal with Aston is new, it's not like Honda's new to F1. For that reason, I see Aston Martin falling within the upper midfield, and mostly because I think it'll take a season or two for them to make it to that top level that people think they're going to get to. But it is always a possibility. The ceiling for this team really can go as high as 4th, as if Newey nails the regulations, it wouldn't be super out of the question for a Fernando Alonso win. Now, if it doesn't work out, I still don't see him falling below 8th, as they still do have the consistency to stay ahead some of the more shaky competition. My guess falls into 7th, as I have to stick with some predictions of previous videos, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot out of Aston Martin this year. Next is Haas, and after the year they had in 2025, the expectations are a bit different. Usually the trend with Haas is that they do well in the start of the year and struggle with upgrades and fall off in the back half. And while they did start strong, they also had a good bit of points late in the year. Now, more of that is probably attributed to Ollie Behrman getting used to the car and putting in great results, and I think its momentum will carry into 2026, but the team might not. Haas has been known to be the smallest team on the grid when it comes to personnel, facilities, and finances, and even though they have had a lot of funding with Toyota, 2026 might be a down year for them, and a rebuild to optimize 2027. I see them being in the lower midfield range of the grid, and them making the call decently early in the year to focus on a better car for 2027. Their ceiling could be as high as 7th if they do end up delivering, and having a good car, but the floor is as low as 11th with Cadillac. My personal guess is 10th, as those early season points can go a long way, but I wouldn't be surprised if Haas had a down year this time around, just hopefully not as bad as some of their down years in the past. When I mentioned earlier that another team had a huge amount of uncertainty, I was referring to Audi. With Audi being new on the grid, they have a huge range of where they can place, and unlike Cadillac, their engine program is already in action, and we have no idea what the results of the new Audi engine can produce. Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto are both coming off of great seasons, and I've said it many times and I'll say it again, but I think Bortoleto is a top-tier driver in the sport. Realistically, Audi will have struggles in the season, as all new teams should, but they have had time to grow into the sport, with the Sauber team transitioning into Audi. Their ceiling could be as high as 5th if they produce good machinery, as if their power unit is good, they're the only team that benefits. But the floor is last, for the same reason that if the engine is terrible, they are the only team that suffers. It's a huge range, and my guess falls in the middle with an 8th, as I believe this season will be quite the roller coaster for Audi. Finally, we have Alpine. Alpine finished dead last in 2025, but I think that'll make a change for this coming year. Both drivers are a lot better than people give them credit for, and the shift to Mercedes power units is the change I think that will shoot them up the standings. They have had struggles in the past, and being able to point the blame on the Renault power unit, but that's no longer the case. Alpine really has had the opportunity to go crazy this year if Colapinto begins to perform, and I really think that they can make a push for the top 5 if that is the case. Now, if that doesn't happen, they definitely will do better than their P10 last year, and I don't see them going lower than 9th. My personal prediction for them is a P6, which is definitely more optimistic than most people will be, but I truly think Pierre Gasly and Franco Colapinto are solid. They just need a chance to show it this year. Well, there are my expectations for the 2026 F1 season, and here is my final leaderboard of my predictions. Who knows, this could be accurate, or it could all crumble as soon as testing rolls around. But one thing is for sure, this year is going to be a great one to watch.